Nomura unexpectedly goes to the Game Boy Advance for the next Kingdom Hearts. While this video will focus on Kingdom Hearts 2, we need to talk about Chain of Memories, because it's here that we see some of the worst aspects of Kingdom Hearts come to light. Nomura won't even let a spin-off game on an entirely different platform be standalone. It must have relevance and impact the main story in some way. The start of Kingdom Hearts 2 is a confusing one for those who thought Chain of Memories would be an inconsequential part of the story. Sure, KH2 could do a better job at explaining a few things throughout the game. You can apply that opinion to this entire series, honestly. Yeah, I think it works perfectly fine, even if you avoid this weird card game hybrid entirely. Props to Square Enix for remaking it in the HD collection though. This little game got a lot of love from them, and you might end up loving it yourself. I certainly didn't though. If you thought the combat in KH1 was slow, then this odd interpretation of that through card-based attacks will be a real slog. Along with the repeated locations from the first game, I immediately determined this to not be my sort of thing, read a summary of the events, and swiftly moved on to Kingdom Hearts 2. Oh boy, this game is absolutely my thing. I knew it was going to be better, everyone hyped it up as much, but this much better. My expectations were surpassed and then some. How about the beginning though? Some said they found it to be even worse than the start of the first game. Yeah, I couldn't disagree more. You start playing as this random anime boy Roxas. Throughout the start you're left wondering where our three goofballs are and how all this connects to the main story we've been following up until now. These questions kept me compelled through even the mundane part-time jobs. There's always a hint of something more going on. As soon as you're introduced to the nobodies, the fights may seem a little slow, but because they don't spend half their time hiding away in black puddles as the Heartless did in the first, they end up being quicker and more satisfying. The newly introduced reaction commands act essentially as quick-time events that you don't mind pulling off. They're integrated into the combat beautifully, never feeling too out of place or as though you're taking a break from the fighting to watch a cutscene. From here on out, it only gets better as Roxas' story comes to a head when he realizes he is also a nobody. Sora's nobody specifically, created when he stabbed himself with the Keyblade and turned into a Heartless in the first game. Suddenly we're given a new layer of depth to his character, and I was instantly hooked on this tragic concept of not knowing you're a nobody and that reveal shattering your worldview. What does it mean to be someone without a heart? Hearts are referred to plenty in the series, but more often than not they appear to be a stand-in for what many would consider to be a soul. Your heart is your humanity, everything that makes you real and good, which is why most villains are seen to be either without them or have them corrupted by darkness. The iconography for a heart is more concrete and instantly recognizable too, so it makes total sense that they would choose this as opposed to an even more vague concept of a soul. The villains of Kingdom Hearts 2 are the fascinating Organization 13, and like Roxas, most of them have more depth than anyone from the previous installment. We're first introduced to Axel, who claims he's a friend of Roxas despite carrying out orders from higher up to kill him. This redhead is a fan favourite and you can clearly see why. Even though I found his goofy character to be a little heavy-handed at first, he ends up being more nuanced than the majority of characters in the series, due in large part to some fantastic voice acting from Quinton Joseph Flynn. His magnetic voice conveys all the displeasure Axel has in doing what he has to. His "got it memorized" catchphrase doesn't add all that much to his character besides an annoyance in my opinion. Fortunately, it isn't as repetitive as I expected, and with so much great dialogue, it's pretty easy to overlook. Axel is a superb character, but him being a member of Organization 13 is what makes him truly special. Being given a sympathetic villain so early on foreshadows the fact that Kingdom Hearts 2 has far more depth than the first, both in its story and characters. This is furthered by the reveal that the Twilight Town we've been in for the past few hours is merely a simulation, because if there's anything Kingdom Hearts really needed aspects of, it was the Matrix. Compounding the fact that his world and friends were all fake, along with him being a nobody, makes Roxas' story the most tragic in Kingdom Hearts in my opinion. His entire world comes crumbling down until he has to accept his place as a part of Sora with a smile. You'd think I'd be crying the way I'm talking about this part, but truth be told, it didn't hit me all that hard the first time. I love whenever a piece of media talks about what it means to be human. Nobodies are like Kingdom Hearts' version of robots or AI, and they fit into the story perfectly. So while I appreciated how surprisingly strong this sad start was, especially compared to the start of the first game, I didn't have a big enough connection with Roxas for it to actually hit me as hard as I'd have liked. That's because his backstory, in which you really start to care for Roxas, is saved for yet another spin-off game. 3 958 over however the fuck you're supposed to pronounce this dumbass title. Gameplay wise, I've not heard great things, but it's reduced to a series of cutscenes in the HD collection. Some were entertaining, most weren't, and I felt the repetition settle in pretty early on. Fortunately, making it a drinking game, thereby putting some gameplay back into it, makes it a lot more fun.
Got it memorized?
Oh, I do!
Wow.
Returning to Kingdom Hearts 2 though, with Roxas back in Sora's heart, body? Something like that at least. We're back with the Goofsters after a long sleep. Immediately you can tell that Sora has grown. His body is a little too big for his old outfit, and his voice has gone through puberty too.
Let's see. We defeated Ansem.
There's a discernible difference not only in him, but the gameplay as well. If you thought Roxas was a little slow, similar to KH1, then Sora is sure to grab your attention. He's quick, the attacks, combos, and animations are all faster and flashier than the first. It feels incredible when compared to Kingdom Hearts. Maybe not Devil May Cry, but you can tell that this is what the series was meant to be like all along. The team at Square Enix was able to successfully tie Sora's literal growth as a fighter into the gameplay. Even the way he opens up chests is showy. The clumsy newbie Sora is pretty much gone, and I could not be happier. This payoff after another slow start is just what Kingdom Hearts needed. Not only are we reunited with Sora, Donald, and Goofy, but they've never felt better to play with, and it only gets even better from here on out. So begins my gushing about Kingdom Hearts 2. You're taken to the 3 ferries to get some new threads, try saying that 5 times fast, and a new mechanic as well, and it's my absolute favourite in Kingdom Hearts so far, drive forms. I love these things so much, particularly as the first one you're introduced to encourages a more aggressive strength-based attack style. Whatever, no, okay. Oh, cool. That's really worth it. It's really worth it, guys. Dual-wielding Keyblades is incredibly satisfying, even more so since you can actually pick which Keyblade goes in your other hand. At first I was a little overwhelmed by the number of abilities being given near the start, and getting used to all of these extra menus took some time, but after you realise that the menus for the drive forms are basically just there to remind you what extra abilities you have access to whilst in it, and not for customization, it gets a little better. That's the pacing of Kingdom Hearts 2 though. In comparison to the first, it's at a breakneck speed. Mechanically, new things, primarily abilities, are being introduced almost every 15 minutes. Level up, unlock a new ability, suddenly your combo is increased, you can block, you get a new finisher. To compensate for the number of abilities being given to you this time around, KH2 gives you a bunch of AP boosts, which you'll no doubt use on Sora since, you know, you play him. Donald and Goofy's AI is definitely improved here. You also have better customization over how they use their abilities, but it's still not enough to justify giving them upgrades over Sora. While the idea of using AP boosts adds another layer of customization, in practice, because they're near useless on your AI buddies, maybe a general increase in your AP would have been better. Using this method, the gameplay wouldn't be broken up by even more reasons to go into the menu, even if only for a moment. Of course, once you get into the swing of things, it's not so bad. I adore this aspect of Kingdom Hearts' gameplay because instead of boring increases to attack defense magic by a mere 5% of something akin to most games, entirely new attacks and moves are being added. Even something as simple as an additional attack on your combo is far more significant a change than a minor increase to the damage that your Keyblade does. When those other stats do increase, however, Kingdom Hearts 2, like the first game, keeps the numbers low so that even a single +1 increase is noticeable. Then you have the pace of the worlds. They go by at about twice the speed of the first game. The sound effects deserve a huge shout out for making every hit pack a punch this time round. The Keyblade no longer sounds dull, instead it actually feels like you're smacking into each and every enemy. The fact that the first Disney World is based on one of my favourite films, Mulan, means that KH2 continues on very strong in my book. However, similarly to the first game, I don't believe most of the worlds themselves are all that special. They only introduce some new, appropriately themed enemies, have a few fun bosses with some decent cutscenes. What makes the worlds more compelling in Kingdom Hearts 2 isn't only the speed and satisfaction of the combat, but just when you think they might be about to get boring, you're whisked off to the next one. There's no chance to get bored. None of these worlds feel monotonous as they did in the first, and while I think more could have been done with them, this was on the PS2 and they're perfectly enjoyable for how long you're in them, even if in a sense you are doing the same thing from world to world. Before Mulan though, we're treated to a return to Hollow Bastion. Square Enix knew their audience and how well this place went down with players of the original game, so seeing it here in a Traverse Town-esque context is a pleasant surprise. None of the assets from the original appear to be reused. You're exploring an entirely new part of this world, and it makes for a wonderful base of operations and dumping ground for many Final Fantasy characters. Hollow Bastion showcases exactly the sort of thing Kingdom Hearts 2 gets right, revisiting worlds from KH1 and changing them up or adding enough so that they feel totally fresh, because holy shit, they're actually different and don't feel like the easy rehashes they could have done. Hercules returns, but it's an actual world this time. Being able to explore literally the opposite side of this world was a wonderful surprise when I was anticipating having another bunch of fights and nothing more. Primarily because I would have been totally fine with that. But the introduction of the absolute unit, Auron, into the KH world is most welcome, along with the rest of the underworld. On top of all that, you still get an arena to fight your way through by the end of the world. It's just what it should have always been, some great side content. The same principle carries over to Halloween Town, which similarly allows you to travel to Christmas Town for the majority of it. Even Agrabah doesn't feel as though it's more of the same, with more time spent on the magic carpet than ever before. A satisfying second visit allows for a rematch against Jafar Genie Man on a grander, if easier scale. And as for Atlantica... Okay, so Atlantica wasn't all that great in the original, but it was still a world, and as I stated, nowhere near as bad as I imagined. In Kingdom Hearts 2, Atlantica is a minigame world comprised of some of the worst rhythm games I've ever played. Not only is the music itself god-awful for the most part, with Sora coming in to ruin classics like Under the Sea,
The seaweed is always greener in somebody.
what the fuck is that shit? But the actual button prompts never line up with the music itself. So it's more of a press the button at the right time than an actual rhythm game. Just please never make your own original Disney songs again, Square, because this is the opposite of whatever finny fun is.
A musical for everyone to have a lot of finny fun.
That's why it's hotter.
Under the water.
What? See, she's totally trying to do a bit of patois. Claire, thank God. The only other worlds that stick out as particularly lackluster are Pirates of the Caribbean and Tron. The former is because Square is pushing clashing styles farther than ever before, with about as much cohesion as you'd expect from putting an anthropomorphic duck, dog, and an anime boy in with a bunch of humans, who are admittedly all shockingly well modelled for the PS2 era. The voice of Captain Jack Sparrow sounds like a cheap impersonator, and while that might be a problem for many of the Disney characters in Kingdom Hearts, seeing a well-rendered Johnny Depp face without his voice coming out of it is extra weird.
You've a point there.
Same goes for the rest of them, but the iconic voice of the captain is the most notable. None of that would matter if the gameplay was fun though. Unfortunately, yeah, it isn't. You're restricted in many of the fights to parts of the level where moonlight is hitting, otherwise these pirates won't take any damage. So the awkward pushing and more often than not waiting slows down the usually fast-paced action, making for one of the most monotonous worlds in the game in my experience. Tron on the other hand is not quite as bad. The reason why I bring it up in this context is the squandered potential. Tron is a video game movie essentially, meaning it should make for a perfect world in Kingdom Hearts, which is, you know, a video game. Instead, we're given light cycles that control, like, not light cycles. They're part of a minigame where, rather than kill enemies with the ray of light, you smack them with your keyblade like you've been doing for the past however many hours. This had the potential to be one of the most engaging true-to-film segments, but it's just another clunky minigame that I'd rather not be playing. Fortunately, it's not that long and you're not forced into it so much. This is the one big gameplay switch-up that happens in Tron, and for it to be so underwhelming when you consider how well the movie lends itself to Kingdom Hearts is incredibly disappointing. Much like the other worlds, however, Tron still looks the part and its neon-drenched theming remains intact. On the opposite end of the spectrum, there's the classical Disney world, a surprise found inside Disney Castle, which is possibly the most delightful Kingdom Hearts world in existence. Black and white alone would have been a distinct enough change from the rest of these colourful worlds. Even the status bars are desaturated. Throw in a vintage audio filter and the classic Disney style, however, and you've got a truly special place. The constant and varied fights and classical scenes are fun to be a part of, from a rickety building site to being a giant in a town knocking planes out of the sky. The most memorable part is probably these fucking cars though, one of the most annoying enemies in Kingdom Hearts 2, but a testament to the variety on display. A benefit of having faster paced worlds is that new enemies are introduced frequently and don't have a chance to get too old too fast, unless they have 4 wheels. Returning to the story for a bit, Kingdom Hearts 2 settles into a nice groove, going between mostly enjoyable Disney worlds and finding out a little more about Organization 13 each time. Then we get to the big payoff back in Hollow Bastion, a reunion with Mickey Mouse, the boy himself. After all this time, we actually get to see and interact with the mascot of capitalism. And...
it's not good.
He unveils more convoluted plot points about Ansem from KH1 not being the Ansem, but being his Heartless, and then his nobody being the leader of Organization 13. This is honestly just the tip of the iceberg,
Don't tell me there's more.
and this bit is relatively easy to follow.
I'm lost enough as it is.
I will say that in hindsight, I dislike the game not introducing a whole new villain, but appreciate the way it ties together the first and second game, utilizing the newly added nobody lore. More importantly to me, Sora has many questions about Riku and Kairi, yet none of them are answered, and it's clear that the mouse motherfucker is hiding something.
I'm sorry, I can't help.
So after all this time, we get a whole lot of nothing. Thanks, Nomura.
Gosh, I can't remember.
Moving swiftly on, we have an absolutely fantastic series of events to make up for that. Heartless and Nobodies are assaulting Hollow Bastion, and our heroes along with their friends must fend them off. Soon enough we're into a boss fight with the lamest organization member, Demyx, who Sora is quick to call out on just that.
How'd a wimp like you get into Organization 13?
Yes! My boy Sora in this game is so good! If I wanted to go into detail about every single scene in Kingdom Hearts 2, we'd be here for hours and hours. But I will say Sora's newfound confidence and immense amounts of sass really brought me around to loving him in most of the scenes.
Well, we might have had something to do with it.
With that solid boss dealt with, you help one Final Fantasy character after another fight off the horde of Heartless attacking Hollow Bastion. During this, I began to feel a sense of camaraderie unlike anything conveyed in Kingdom Hearts 1. All these characters coming together to fight against evil is wonderfully anime, culminating in the most anime scene of them all, as you fight off literally 1,000 Heartless. The best part is that you're in complete control of this. No other scene in Kingdom Hearts makes you feel so powerful. It really is an incredible moment that reminds you how far Sora has come. To do all this on the PS2 furthermore is insane. Yes, it's clear that only the Heartless in your proximity are being fully rendered, but it still manages to convey the feeling of an epic battle playing out before you. Honestly, bravo Square. All these years later and a first timer like myself is still thinking about how fucking great this set piece is. After it's all over, we're treated to another fantastic moment. In fact, it just might be my favourite character moment for Sora, as Axel appears revealing that Sora is doing exactly what the organization wants him to do, kill Heartless. Right after killing 1,000 of them and feeling like a badass, you're told all that did was aid the bigger enemy. Soon after, Saïx, or how the hell you say his name, appears, scaring off Axel and denying Sora the right to see Kairi again. It's here that my favourite Sora moment happens. He feels hopeless after being told that he just helped the ones who are holding Kairi hostage, so he literally just begs to see her, on his knees. Sora is at his lowest and the helplessness in his voice is potent.
I don't care about any of that. Just let me into the realm of darkness, okay?
This is what I want so much more of in Kingdom Hearts. These displays of genuine emotion, watching Sora beg to see his friend again, stuck with me far more than the numerous discussions and monologues about hearts and friendship. Scenes like this drive home the themes of Kingdom Hearts rather than having them all blatantly stated with all the subtlety of a Disney themed hammer. The same goes for Goofy dying. Goofy died by the way, for like 10 minutes. He got hit in the head. We were all very sad, especially Donald, which made me pretty sad.
I'm sorry about the ice cream.
Oh,
Goofy?
my heart.
Goofy.
Oh.
This is not happening.
Despite the fact that he's clearly not going to die, then he comes back like he wasn't just the focal point of an emotional scene. Classic Goofy. Still, it was a great moment to push the characters forward to a vengeful charge into the Heartless. Yeah! Go kill him! More of this, please, Nomura, and less of this.
Oh, I'm kinda confused.
A few worlds are still off limits depending on how you went about playing the game, and at this point you're encouraged to revisit what I thought were completed worlds. Instantly I was filled with dread, thinking that this would finally be the part in which Kingdom Hearts 2 becomes a bit of a slog. Thankfully, that doesn't happen. Each revisit is made exciting again by the appearance of organization members. Whether it's fighting them one-on-one or a creature they've summoned, they make the returns well worth the time. Plus it feels as though you're getting a more satisfying and complete ending to each world's story. How have we been getting to these worlds this entire time? Well, the Gummy Ship is back, and like everything else in Kingdom Hearts 2, it's way better. For my money, it's still not good enough for me to do any more than I have to, but hey, I don't hate the process of getting to each world anymore. In fact, some are pretty damn fun with their F-Zero-esque aesthetic, and now actually require you to move the ship to win. Nothing spectacular, but it doesn't detract from the game in the way it absolutely did in KH1, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Square expands upon these sections in the long-awaited third installment. The finale, in a sense, begins with the biggest gummy ship mission of all as we're treated to an onslaught from the heartless Dreadnought.
Oh, this is going to be easy.
This is one of those things in Kingdom Hearts that feels like it really shouldn't be here. A heavily Star Wars, Star Fox inspired mission such as this contrasts massively with the rest of the game. However, like in KH1, in the moment,
it just works.
Creating the build-up to an epic finale.
This is where the fun begins.
Upon seeing Roxas in a picture, Sora instinctively knows his name, and I love this aspect of knowing who someone is because they're a part of you, but not knowing who they are. Still, with the Twilight Town mansion in the background, our heroes make it through the Dreadnought and arrive back to see the friends of Roxas. The reunion is cut a little short by, basic nobodies.
Oh no, why is this such a dramatic... Guys, we do know they're the easiest enemy type, right? We do know this, right? Oh, thank God Mickey's here. God, I'm so glad you showed up. After the heroic rescue, Mickey continues to cockblock Sora from finding Riku, and the gang says fuck it and goes to find Roxas in the virtual Twilight Town. After transporting into the virtual town, they eventually come across a portal to the realm of darkness. This leads to actually being overwhelmed by nobodies, unlike what just happened outside, which is nice because it means that when Axel comes in, it actually feels like a rescue. Sadly, the only way to clear a path for Sora is to essentially self-destruct. What's even sadder is the direction of this scene. Instead of feeling like an epic final stand from one of the best characters in the series, Axel is just suddenly lying on the floor, about to die. This was,
You know what I mean?
very quick. After unleashing a probably unnecessarily powerful attack against a ton of average nobodies. There's a lot of them, but Sora and company could have beaten them eventually without much hassle. After a sweet interaction in which he remarks that Sora reminds him of Roxas, the only person he ever liked, Axel opens up a portal to the organization's headquarters and passes away. They tried, but in my opinion failed to give Axel the send-off he truly deserved.
It's kind of funny.
Oh well, it's all on the up and up from here on out as we're transported to the world that never was. A world which doesn't waste any time getting to the good stuff, because after a few typical fights, we're treated to arguably the greatest boss in the game. Roxas. This battle raging in Sora's heart, God, I'm starting to sound as bad as the games, aren't I? Really is spectacular. The energetic, explosive action brought about by facing another Keyblade wielder in a familiarly abstract place makes for a memorable boss. The fact that it's Roxas along with his contrasting theme is just the icing on the cake. As the battle comes to a head, Sora strikes down Roxas and we get a glimpse into his past, with the reveal that Roxas is a given name, an anagram for Sora with an X shoved in, if you hadn't figured that out already, thus hinting at the nature of the rest of the organization. Making these particular members more sympathetic is how their inherent confusion at being a nobody, wanting to understand more about the world and themselves, is being taken advantage of by Xemnas. Axel's recent death makes the next scene with him and Roxas all the more touching as they say goodbye to one another. Despite not getting much time with them, I felt the emotion here. It came off as so genuine and lovely, with a hint of that Kingdom Hearts cheese, but not enough to overwhelm the flavour.
Take care, okay?
Right back at you, buddy.
You gonna cry?
If you thought the dark and gloomy city didn't have the finale feeling you wanted, then the castle of Organization 13 literally fucking floating in the sky should get the hype juices flowing a little more. Cause damn, the scale of this thing is immense, giving me exactly what I want from an adventurous JRPG. KH1 had some beautiful imagery, but sometimes you just want a big fuck off castle dungeon to end a game. Filled with nobodies as expected, they're more satisfying than ever to take down with the new Keyblade from Roxas. Everything is bathed in white, and ironically our protagonists feel like they're surrounded by darkness more than ever. In a particularly hilarious scene, Riku is revealed to look like Ansem as Kairi addresses him adoringly.
Riku, you're really here?
It's supposed to be a big reveal, and while it is, there's no denying that I found it funny with the way Kairi is so loving towards this tall, yellow-eyed, statuesque, sexy man. Okay, maybe she actually prefers him like this. Soon enough they find themselves looking at Sora in the flesh, but before they can have a moment, Sora is bounced and a little overwhelmed by, basic Heartless. Fortunately, Kairi is here to save him with her friendship? Shockingly enough, that doesn't work, and Hot Riku has to save her, giving her a Keyblade right after, because now she can wield one too, I guess?
What's going on?
Then we move back to Mickey reuniting with Diz, voiced by Christopher Lee of all people. He was looking over the virtual Twilight Town near the start. Now it turns out that he's the real Ansem and not the other 10 versions of him. Mickey reveals that he made a promise to Riku not to tell anyone about what had happened to him after going on Ansem's mission to defeat Roxas. He also mentions that Riku was willing to live in the darkness to wake Sora, which just shows how far he's come as a character. No longer the edgy boy from KH1, he cares about his friends more than anything else. The next big encounter is with the surfer dude of Organization 13, Xigbar, who has one of the coolest looks of the entire cast. An eye patch, scars, menacing yellow eye, let's not get into that one, and a voice that sounded silly at first but has actually grown on me since, particularly after hearing more of him in Birth by Sleep. He's got an undeniably cool, cocky presence that's fun as hell to watch.
But man, did it pick a dud this time.
To top it off, he's also got a great boss fight to go with it. Like almost every Organization member, he has a gimmick. Him being a sniper, he changes the camera to his perspective whenever he's scoping out Sora. It feels very Metal Gear Solid and I love it. Each and every Organization member was a blast to fight, honestly. Kingdom Hearts 2 is a huge game, so I've not gone as in-depth as I'd have liked on many fights, but they all bring something new to the table in both personality and gameplay. Plus, in the final mixed version, you can fight members who died during Chain of Memories, adding a whole bunch of additional high-quality content to KH2. My absolute standout in terms of gimmicks has to be Zexion, for his ability to mess with the command menu. Getting you to flip through it like a book until you find an escape option adds so much tension as you have to keep an eye on his attacks whilst you look through this book in the bottom left of the screen. It also expertly messes with the player's head, or at least it did with mine. Here you have a menu that stayed fairly readable throughout each game, and suddenly you're thrown into a situation where you're unable to attack and the familiar is flipped on its head to make for a truly memorable, optional boss fight. But this random attack can go fuck itself. And he's dead. Get fucked! Marluxia is the only other one that initially comes to mind. Rather than a HP bar, you have a set amount of times you can get hit based on your level. The only way to recover these points is to successfully counter him in the first phase. After that, you're all on your own. The way this boss forces you to memorize its attack patterns and vulnerable points is brilliant. It's not as punishing as a one-hit kill, yet it heightens the tension to a similar space as you see your points dwindling. Without a potion to rely on for recovery, you must be on top form or you get severely punished from the slightest mistake. I never thought I could beat this boss, yet I did just that, and it proves how tight and satisfying Kingdom Hearts 2's gameplay is. That's fine, we're fine. We're fine, we got this, we got this, we got this! Yes! Drive Gorge powered up as well. Mwah. Beautiful, beautiful. I never felt cheated or absolutely hopeless, I only wanted one more go. Oh, I want to try that guy one more time. I'm trying again. One more time. This time is the last try. These absent silhouettes offer a bunch of excellent optional boss fights, with later data versions of every member being able to fight for the more masochistic among you. Now it's time to finally reunite with Kairi and Riku. Much like KH1, I appreciate that this reunion doesn't feel as imagined, what with Riku looking like Ansem. However, it makes it all the more powerful that they're still so happy to be with one another again, despite everything that's changed. It takes Sora a moment, but he sees that Riku really is that hot boy beneath that manly Ansem exterior. Okay, I'll stop joking because this scene is actually super emotional and well executed. Riku's attempt to walk away because he didn't want to return to Sora like this, Kairi begging him to stay, and Sora breaking down after realizing that he's finally found his friend after all this time. It actually gets to me, something I didn't expect when I first started this series, but after spending so much time on this journey, a connection was bound to be formed to some extent, and this is the scene that will prove if it has been for you.
I looked everywhere for you! You gonna cry?
Soon enough, however, we're thrown into another boss fight, this time with Luxord, who provides another satisfactory, gimmicky fight. The word gimmick used in reference to these fights isn't derogatory by any means. At this point, you're probably comfortable enough with the combat that mixing it up with factors such as minigames and time gorges is a welcome addition. Although Luxord's gimmick is more visually interesting than anything else, turning you into a die is hilarious and picking cards looks neat, despite the mechanic being strikingly similar to one of the first action commands against a nobody. That doesn't mean I really understood it on my first couple of tries though. This boy confused the hell out of me in an admittedly fun way. What the fuck is this? What? A slightly more straightforward fight with Saïx, or however the fuck you say his name, comes soon after, as arguably the most boring organization member seeks to finish off not Roxas himself.
Yeah, he's Sora.
pressure to get in a ton of damage as you see his berserk meter fill up is another superb idea though, with it filling up faster and faster each time it fills completely, at which point he's able to unleash an intense barrage of attacks. This encourages some aggressive play and is a great example of how Kingdom Hearts 2 can challenge players who stick to one particular style. I also love whenever I can beat the shit out of a boss with his own weapon, so points for that too. Sora finally asks the right person about why everyone's been calling him Roxas, and we're able to see the fight between Roxas and Riku. Specifically the point at which Riku was forced to give into the darkness and unleash his stand. It gets a little heart-wrenching as Roxas shouts about how he's his own person, and the way Diz tells Riku that Roxas cannot feel due to being a nobody is hugely reminiscent of Nier Automata and how certain characters there continuously deny androids having emotions in spite of them clearly displaying some throughout the story.
Emotions are prohibited.
Sorry, ma'am.
While there's a similar conflict within the nobodies themselves, some such as Roxas appear to believe much stronger in their existence, while other members of the organization are resigned to the idea that they will never be complete without a heart. Characters like Roxas and Axel prove to me that there's something more to them. Despite not having a heart, they are able to feel. It seems as though Xemnas is feeding into their existing doubt that they're nothing without a heart. He utilizes the understandable desires for each member for a heart, also he can control Kingdom Hearts himself and harness its power. So it's time to take this fucker down. Ansem the Wise attempts to put all Kingdom Hearts into data, but he's no Square Enix, so it can't fit on the disc and it explodes, killing him and reverting Riku back to his original self. How, convenient.
Ansem did say anything could happen.
It also unleashes a ton of Heartless onto the world, but more importantly, Riku's guns are unleashed onto us.
Damn, boy, he's thick! Boy, that's a thick-ass boy! Damn!
After all this time, the reunion feels complete as you get to fight alongside Riku, topped off with a ton of sweet combos that translate that story beat onto the gameplay perfectly. As we approach the end, I promise, our good boys move up and challenge Xemnas. Before everyone can dunk on this guy, though, he transports Sora to another world, specifically further on in time in 2012 where Disney had bought Lucasfilm so he can use some sick lightsabers. This is yet another great one-on-one fight, and it also happens to make a good argument for why Square Enix might have been a better pick for the Star Wars license than EA. On normal mode I beat him a little too easily with Thunder, but this is one of very few games I'm considering going back to playing again on a harder difficulty so that I can appreciate some of these boss fights more than I originally did. Speaking of appreciating boss fights, it's time to go all out anime. This shot of Riku, Sora and Mickey really gets those hype juices flowing as we step into one of the most bombastic endings to a game I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. Sora's cutting down literal buildings like they're nothing, Naruto jumping all over the place as we're transported from one hectic scene to another. While I'm not the biggest fan of being thrown into situations with random bars, needing to read instructions at the top left feels at odds with the momentum of the rest of the scene, however the incredible music and sheer amount of damage you can deal out by this point in KH2 power through these shortcomings to make this pretty thrilling. Maybe a little too fast paced however, as when we reach Xemnas on his throne, he's a pushover. Sure, this isn't the final form, but it's a little too obvious that it isn't due to how easy he is to defeat. Now the final form? That's pretty cool. You could ride to him on whatever the hell this space bike is. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not awful, so it builds up the anticipation for the real fight fairly well. That real fight is against his kingly form and the blue eyes white building dragon that protects him whenever you're flung away. The scale is immense, managing to even outdo the massive final boss of KH1, primarily because you're throwing fucking buildings at this guy. It's anime as fuck and I love it. But damn it, it's not doing the things that I want it to do. Yeah! Did it, boys! Did it. G, end of the game. Then obviously there's the final form because this game never ends.
There's gonna be no end to this!
While Sora was fighting the dragon, Xemnas popped out a Hot Topic and got a new cloak. Now he's ready to kick my ass. Fortunately, Riku's right beside us to help out and make this arguably the coolest boss in the entire game. The environment, music, and absolute bromance going on is a sight to behold. Some of the fight does come down to simply mashing triangle, but the violin, those team attacks, you even get to play as Riku for a short time to save Sora, driving home that theme of friendship and the idea that these two need one another, while still letting you have control over the action. That action hits its peak as you deflect every bullet imaginable and proceed to wreck Xemnas' shit. Okay, so maybe this fight doesn't have some of the more interesting mechanical depth that other organization fights do, but damn does it have spectacle. It manages to feel cinematic without reducing the fight to merely watching cutscenes and hitting quick time events, even if both of those things are present. Most of all, it's a fight with two best buddies and the culmination of a long ass journey which ends in spectacular fashion. Our lovely boys make it through a portal into the realm of darkness and have an appropriate heart-to-heart. I adore how open and honest they are about their own insecurities, wanting to be just like the other. It's relatable, honest, and human, something sorely missing from many interactions in this series.
What I said back there about thinking I was better at stuff than you? To tell you the truth, Sora, I was jealous of you.
What for?
I wished I could live life the way you do. Just following my heart.
Yeah, well, I've got my share of problems too.
Like what?
Like wanting to be like you.
Well, there is one advantage to being me. Something you can never imitate.
Really? What's that?
Having you for a friend.
Then I guess I'm okay the way I am. I've got something you could never imitate too.
Bringing me back to my desire for more talking in Kingdom Hearts. Maybe that sounds funny because yeah, there's a ton of dialogue in these games, but most of it's centered around some sort of imminent threat or plot point, and the opportunity for general chit-chat is minimal. Understandably so perhaps, but in a series about friendship and hearts connected, we never get enough time to see these bonds so often talk about actually being formed. Maybe there's a joke here and there, the characters seem to get along well, however I'd love to see more of these personal conversations that flesh out the characters. Thankfully this talk between Sora and Riku comes at the very end to leave this game on a high note, as well as reminding us that darkness isn't inherently evil. After all, Riku had to use it, and they seem to be content staying in it as long as their friends are safe in the light. Well, we aren't content with that though. After receiving a message from Kairi, the path to beautiful CGI opens, the superior Kingdom Hearts theme begins to play, and all our friends are back together without any heartless or nobodies getting in the way of them just being happy. It really is a beautiful ending, a payoff after the extensive journey of not one but 2 games. I may not have enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 1 all that much, but I can't deny that the added length and time spent with these characters made this ending all the better. The cut to black is perfectly placed, not letting the scene revel in its own goodness for too long, leaving you wanting more, but ultimately satisfied with a pretty fantastic game.
You gonna cry?
That was Kingdom Hearts 2, a huge step up from its predecessor in every way, and a game well worth playing even in 2019. Bosses this good don't age poorly. I know this was a lengthy video, and trust me, I didn't get to talk about nearly everything I wanted to, like how I actually enjoyed the Lion King world. I didn't hate being changed into a lion with limited attacks, or how I kind of hate the blocking because of the animation taking so long, but understand that that's kind of intentional, so you can't spam it. Anyway, future videos like this will have a better structure and more in-depth talking points, since I won't leave it months before getting around to making the video after beating the game, and then also returning to the script after even more months. This may have been a little messy, but I hope you enjoyed seeing my journey through Kingdom Hearts 2. With 3 coming out any day now, expect something on that in the near future. Please feel free to like the video and subscribe if you did in fact enjoy it. As a thank you for making it to the end of this video, please enjoy this wonderful explanation that Otherbin created in a GIF of how Roxas and Naminé came to be. I'll see you guys next time. Look at this. Bit more than a diagram, this is pretty high tech shit. Went into her, went into Sora. These are pretty cute drawings of them actually, I like it. And then her heart, yeah, her heart goes into him as well. Because that's a, okay. He's got the keyblade. Yeah, he fights a lot, right? Stabs himself. Yeah. And when he does that, when he stabs himself, then her body, that's not a body, right? What? Okay, and then she splits into, so is that supposed to be her nobody? And then her heart goes out as well, back into her body. Okay, so it's at that moment that she splits and, okay. This is actually like, they are really cute drawings, aren't they? Dude, you can make a comic with this style, it's great.
He couldn't do rocks as well. Okay. He is that falling asleep? What? Wait, what does Carry of the Keyblade? What? Okay, that's it.